Good morning, fish keepers. Cam here from the fishroom.co.nz. We've done it. We've made Friday. Let's do coffee. Good times. I've got to click some buttons in the right position so I know what's going on. That is a good coffee. All right, so today we are joined by a guest, so I won't muck around too much longer. We'll bring on Remi. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. Thank you very much for joining us. It's very much appreciated. I know you're a busy human being, so it's great to have you on board with us today.
Thank you. It's great to be with you as well.
Cool. So you were asked by some of the viewers to get you on, which I think was kind of cool. So a couple of people that were really interested in what you were doing, and a couple of people that were really interested in the work you're doing down in Christchurch. So yeah, that's where we got with that.
Yeah, great. Cool. Where should we start then?
Cool. So my first question I've got for you is, how did you get into aquariums?
Oh, that's a long story, dating back to probably mid-90s, I would say, and where I always had some, aquariums in those days back in Poland, and so I can remember well those times where all this, let's say, high-tech or aquascaping kind of started there. Yeah. And there it's all coming from. And then I had quite a long break from it all. Did a bit of traveling around and ended up in New Zealand. So it's quite difficult to have an aquarium with you if you are moving quite often.
Very much so.
Yeah. Cool. And now I'm here.
Just before we go a little bit any further, John's not with us today. He's got some family stuff going on, so he normally helps all the chat and stuff like that. So it's me today. So if I reply a little bit slower, I am sorry. It's normally him doing it. Equally, if you've got any questions for Remi, please fire away. We can add them to our list of questions to go up with that as well. So yeah. Next question is, so how long have you been interested in aquascaping as opposed to general keeping aquariums?
Yeah, so that was quite interesting because like I said, I always had some aquariums, and they were always in our house when I was a child, let's say. So I kind of grew with them a little bit, and they were obviously just aquariums, standard aquariums, I would say. And then kind of as soon as I started to find some new products coming into the shops, and some all this movement, let's say, was showing up in Europe, I was just kind of straight into it, let's say. Of course, at these days it was quite difficult to get. Expensive product seems crazy expensive at those days. So it wasn't jumping straight into some fully high-tech stuff and having everything which I would like to have from a day one. It was a long process, but that's where I can kind of see a bit of a similarity to a current situation in New Zealand.
Yeah,
I'd say.
So when you're over in Europe, were you heavily in the aquascaping scene, or just sort of playing around, if that makes sense?
Oh, I can't say that I was any kind of a star there or anything like that, but maybe a bit more than an average user, let's say.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, cool.
I don't know how this will work in.
So what do you see the differences currently between like the Europe scene and the New Zealand scene?
That's that's the thing that I think it's a very interesting time here now because yeah, it is all kind of starting and growing really rapidly, and but because so it is quite of late to comparing to the probably the rest of the world for obvious reasons and many reasons, but because it is so late, now we have all this kind of new technology, let's say, and all this knowledge and access to all this knowledge through all the social media and YouTube or all the other stuff, which were absolutely not there those, let's say, 20 years ago, in Central or Eastern Europe. Like you would get a one or two book or like a album with some photographs from Takashi Amano or Olivier Knott or a few other guys, and that was it. And then you were just doing what you were doing, and you could talk with your mates in the shop, or there were then some early chats on very early internet, and it was all very like in the old days. So it was very it was taking much longer time to actually get knowledge and make some progress in how you do things, because you couldn't just type your whatever you are dealing with on YouTube and just have 100 videos saying, well, what should you do? Not saying that they are all right, because a lot of this knowledge it's rubbish, unfortunately, but that's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, love it or hate it, the internet has been a significant game changer for lots of things, but particularly I think aquarium keeping and aquascaping, it's been a massive game changer for everybody to see what's available, what's around, what people can do, how people's imaginations work, and all that sort of stuff. So
yeah, exactly.
It's been a huge shift in aquariums for sure.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. So what's your favorite type of aquascape? Maybe a bit of a loaded question, but
yeah, so it's I would say that the aquascape itself as a term, I think it should be treated much wider than some people think of it. So for me, the term aquascaping, it's not only making some high tech planted aquariums with nano fish and then taking some good quality photos of it. I think aquascaping in general, it's in some kind of a let's say movement to make the aquarium be a decoration or look good, be a piece of art even, maybe. So you can aquascape a betta tank, you can aquascape I don't know, African cichlid tank, or Lake Malawi tank, or any other tank. Can be either, you can either throw some things into it and there it is, or you can try to put some art into it, let's say, and make it look good, make it look like a picture on the wall. And that's the aquascaping. And then sorry.
Far away, keep going.
And then obviously on top of that, you have all the different styles of planted aquariums. So you would have, let's say, a Dutch style and different types of Japanese styles. and again, then KB either aquascape nicely or not, or badly, and so that's how I see it.
I'm kind of glad you brought up that it's not just specifically basically a manicured planted aquarium with lots of nanofish, because I think everyone's definition of aquascaping is different, and sort of for me, as long as someone's putting in an effort to sort of decorate their tank per se, that's an aquascape in a sense, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, and so another side of it, or part of it, is that the main goal of the aquascaping is, one, to create that nice looking, artistic looking display, but also is to create or recreate the natural environment of, you know, the lake or river or coral reef, because I think marine tanks can be aquascaped as well. And the plants are a very important part of this natural habitat. So that's why it's difficult to, apart from some very specific biotopes where there are no plants or very little plants, the plants are very important part of it. And again, then you can have different styles. You can make something like, you know, Agumi behind me, where you kind of, you know, trim your carpet, let's say, to achieve some, you know, nice perspective, and but then again, you let it grow in some natural way, or you have those really like let's say a jungle style scapes where you just kind of want to let it go a little bit and go itself, and the plants to be here and there, and, you know, where they want to grow. And then you have a Dutch style where you have those very certain rules about each plant being the separate chunk, and then, you know, they have to, there are very specific rules about that, how that should be arranged. And again, you know, you can either make it in using some, you know, basic rules of perspective and focal points and all this kind of stuff to get that kind of a wow effect, and you know, or you cannot, or you cannot, and then it just, you know, another tank, basically. Fish tank.
I have to say that the Dutch style aquarium, planted aquarium, is the one that appeals to me the most. No chance that I'll ever be able to complete one. I do not have any near the amount of artistic skills or time requirements for that, but they are a very, very beautiful aquarium setup, and it's one that I really do like, that particular style.
Yeah, no, it's I think it's as a general rule, probably like with anything else, really, it's just important to start. Like you know, I'm not a master in any way in all this, and and most of my tanks are kind of evolving. So it's very, very rare that I start with some, you know, one idea, and and after a year time or half a year, that tanks look exactly how I wanted it for the start. It's usually, you know, in a time it just evolves in So yeah, if you want to try do the Dutch tank, I would just suggest you to try, and then you will see how it goes. And then because, you know, you might find out it's coming pretty well because you are doing something right. And, you know, some tanks, I found that it's quite difficult. It's sometimes very difficult to have only one tank, because then you are kind of over focusing on it, and you are just putting your hands there too often. And sometimes it's just better to leave it a bit.
Yeah. So is that how multiple tank syndrome kicked off? People were focusing too much on one and a little bit further, as opposed to I want to keep these fish and these plants together. Never really considered it that way. Why, particularly aquascapes have lots of different tanks going at the same time for less focus, as it were.
Yeah, you still need to think about all these routines with the maintenance and stuff. I'm not saying to neglect it, but yeah, sometimes
focal points.
Just let it be a bit as well.
Yeah. We've had a couple of questions and comments, so let's jump up to this one. I totally agree. Knowledge is so much easier to access these days, and there is no excuse for doing things like we did decades ago. And I think positively that the hobby is evolving because of which.
Yes, it becomes. I'm actually surprised how much media is happening about generally fish keeping and aquariums. When I started when we started to think kind of seriously, probably on the beginning of last year, about starting that business, we were actually surprised how much stuff was happening and how many channels on YouTube and groups on Facebook and everything was there. Yeah.
And Andre again has said, trick question, what is not aquascaping?
Yeah, this is a tricky one. That's the thing. I can't really say what is not. I think that I would put it another way. There is a very, very important thought about aquascaping or setting up the tanks, and this will be that dates back probably to some Takashi Amano books which I read 20 years ago, but maybe not even him. I can't remember, but I heard this several times recently in some said by some famous guys, is that the thing you want to achieve is that when someone comes to see your tank, let's say, or just pass by and will look at it, he needs to understand and see what your idea was.
Yep.
So like let's say you have your main point in some particular red plant growing there, or maybe some kind of like a sandy path which goes somewhere, or some particular shape or color of rock. So if someone comes and see, that looks like that valley which I saw in the mountains, or that looks like that big red tree which grows somewhere in the park, or something like that. If people can catch by just looking on the tank, can catch what you wanted to replicate, or what you wanted to show, or what your focal point was, or what your key idea was, that means that you did a good job, and that's the aquascaping.
That is a great point.
Yeah,
cool. While we're on the topic of what is not an aquascaper, what is, where do you sit with people using ornaments in their aquascapes? I know it's a really hot topic, and there's a lot of people on one side of the fence or the other. Where do you sit, and what do you think about ornaments and fake things?
Yeah, so with if you want to set up a tank for your children, to start enjoying, having a tank in your house, and and you take them to the fish shop, and you kind of let them run around and choose what they want to have in the tank, and they spot some, like a shipwreck or something like that, or like a treasure chest, and they just hardly want that. Just get it and put it there, and put some few nice fish, and let them enjoy it, and that's it. That's great. That's a great point to start. I can't see a problem with that. I wouldn't probably call that this is aquascaping. But again, if you do some, if you put that wreck ship there, and it's covered with some nice plants, and it really looks like a like a Caribbean wreck ship, that why not? I'm probably not a fan of putting a fake materials in aquarium, like fake plastic plants or plastic wood or plastic backgrounds or anything like that, because that's not what this hobby is about. I can understand that still in New Zealand the access to, especially to the hardscaping materials, is limited. I'm hoping that this will change quite a bit soon. But I can understand that some people might struggle to get what they want, and if you go to the average shop, there won't be a much choice of rocks or driftwood or roots and stuff like that. But we're doing our best to make some changes around that area. And again, like, let's say if you are creating, let's say, Lake Malawi tank, and you need some rocky, stony kind of background. Realistically, it is quite hard to make it from a real rock. Like that's kind of big job, because probably you have to kind of cut some rocks, create some flat side to them to then arrange it vertically and glue them, and it weighs quite a lot. And so if someone buys a nice looking background, that's probably what you have to compromise with, and if then the aquarium looks great, and you achieve crystal clear water, and you have a nice looking happy fish there, and you do some additional rock arrangements which looks nice, and you create some kind of like a flow in the tank and everything else. I can't see saying, well, that's bad tank because it has a plastic background there. It's
I've always worked on the theory of, if it's in your house and you're enjoying it and you're proud of it, then that's all that really matters when it comes to it. And
that's a bit like drinking whiskey. There are some people who are saying, "Oh, it's only on the rocks and everything else. It's and only single malt and everything else is just rubbish." Where the other people say, and just drink it with whatever you want and however you like, and that's 100%. Fine, But I think the important thing is that especially if we are looking in this Japanese idea and Japanese way of doing things, is that they always, as Japanese people in general, they are always looking for progress and for getting better and trying best, and that's that constant work of getting it better. And I think that's this very kind of important part of it. So if so not if you have a tank in your house and I'm enjoying it, it's whatever it is, and it's fine, and it's aquascaping, okay, but what you did in the last day, week, or month or year to try to do it better, or maybe look nicer or improve it in a way. I think that's important part of it as well.
Yeah, totally agree. I have another question up here. Cheryl is struggling to aquascape her African tank. Any recommendation on rocks or layout for them?
Yeah, so again, like we with the rocks, it's exactly what I said. The amount of choice, it's still quite limited. The one rock which we import, it's the wild rhino stone. That's a nice kind of a bouldery dark gray rock, which would definitely fit to this this biotope. In general, it's you kind of can find a lot of rocks in New Zealand, either by the river or in the mountains or even somewhere on the coast. It's always this question of how good or bad are they to put into the aquarium, and potentially what can leach out from them. So I'm always let's say I'm always suggesting for people to think what their hobby is or main hobby is. I'm myself a lot of like DIY person, and I do a lot of things myself, or build a lot of things myself, let's say. But realistically, you don't want to overdo it with a fish keeping or aquascaping hobby, I think, because if you focus too much about kind of doing everything yourself and finding building a tank yourself and building your light yourself and finding your rocks yourself somewhere in the wild, and then collecting some driftwood yourself, that's all great, but it will all probably take you so much time that there might be nothing left to actually put it all together. So sometimes it's better, I think, or maybe not better, but I would always suggest to consider maybe going to the specialistic shop, choosing from what they have there, pay the whatever you have to pay, and then focus on your hobby, which will be fish keeping or aquascaping or whatever we call it. Because in general, you have if this is only your hobby, then you have a limited time for it, and maybe just better spend that additional time at your work, earn some money, and then spend them in a fish shop.
I find hardscape a really interesting topic. Like, I can absolutely love this piece of wood or this piece of rock, and you can think it's hideous. And well, I'm not paying that in the shop. You can go for a walk and you can find another rock or another piece of wood, and you think is absolutely amazing, and it's free to collect and pick up. And it's all in what the person is trying to create in your aquarium, to whether or not it's got value, whether it's a free value from collecting it yourself or whether it's purchasing it from a shop. And like, I've been out in the wild and I've collected many pieces of wood that I've absolutely loved, and plenty that I've just picked up for the sake of picking it up, and I've taken it home on this is horrible.
Yeah.
Just like there's plenty of wood that's come into the shop and I've gone, wow, this is phenomenal. And then these are just really bland and boring. But for me, a bland and boring is absolutely amazing to somebody else. So I always find hardscape, collecting and purchasing, the argument there is a really interesting one for me.
Yeah, so we definitely in New Zealand we are kind of blessed with all this wild nature around us, and there is definitely much more to collect here. Like every one of us, doesn't matter which part of New Zealand you live, have probably a good spots to collect some hardscape in 100-kilometer or 50-kilometer range. If you live I don't know, in Berlin or Warsaw or London, you might have 100 k's to get to a near forest, or 50k, or or a few 100 kilometers to the nearest mountains. So it's a bit different. It's definitely easier to find stuff in here. But again, then let's say there are those kind of rules, let's say, about that you always want to have, let's say, all your rocks in the tank being similar, like not similar kind of in terms of shape or size, but similar, like from the same material, the same coloring. You don't want to have 5 rocks which are this kind of rock, and then having one which is all something different. Even if it's beautiful and you like it and you collect it and it's just this one rock you love, it's probably not going to be looking great in that whole picture. The same with wood. You want to use, in general, apart from some examples, you want to use one kind of wood in your one aquarium. And it is very difficult to collect 5 pieces of the same wood. You can do it if you have some special place where there's a specific type of thing which you can collect. Yeah, that's great. And a lot of people would around the world would shop for hardscape in a way that if they hear that in one shop there is a fresh delivery, they would just go there, dig through all the stuff, choose what they want, and buy it, even if they are not thinking to any particular tank they are going to use it, just to collect the pieces they like. And people would have a great collections of it. Like I talked with Adam Paschel a few days ago about some driftwood or roots, and he said that he probably would have about few cubic meters of his collection of driftwood. So that's a lot of stuff which he just collects, and then he might in some point he might think like, I want to set up that tank, but I had that piece of wood which would be great for it, and then
away you
he
go.
finds it.
Just before we go on to our next question, Tony has said, thank you for bringing in so many great products to New Zealand. I would have to agree. From a retailing point of view, it's fantastic. From a hobbyist point of view, it's even more fantastic. So thank you for what you're doing. That is much appreciated by many people that are in the hobby here in New Zealand.
Yeah, so it's I think our goal is that we want to bring in general, that we want to bring the products which are good value for money, and we definitely dedicated for bringing like a proper branded, high quality products which are not some experiments or some fakes of something else, and so on and so on. We want to bring the true stuff, but at the same time we are very careful about choosing the brands and to bring, basically, like I said, the best value for money, basically.
So I've got another question from the comments, which leads into actually one of the questions that I was going to ask later on. Do you have a favorite species to work with overall, or maybe one that you go in many different kinds of aquascapes? My question was based around plants. I'm not sure if Zen Ginger is plants or fish, but we can probably go with both. Do you have a favorite species of plant and a favorite species of fish to work with?
Yeah, that would be probably the big difference if we talk about the things which we can get here or in general.
You can answer it both ways if you want to.
Okay. All right. So with so I always liked working with the small plants, with the carpeting plants. Also because it is quite challenging, and I think the one which gave me a bit of a hard time all in the days, it's something which is called Utricularia graminifolia.
Okay.
And that's a very, very special plant. It's really small, but kind of like a grassy type. And what is the most surprising is that's a carnivorous plant.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, very difficult to grow. Yeah. Very sensitive for ammonia. So it's almost impossible to start a new tank with a new substrate and like a new setup to start with it, because all the cycling, it's not really good environment for it. So a lot of people are starting either doing the dry starts or using some pre-set up aquariums and then replanting it. There's a lot of kind of tricky stuff around it. Unfortunately, we don't have it here, at least yet. So that would be probably my something which I really enjoy. I enjoy the failures with it, let's say.
The learnings.
From the plants which we have here, I think that the one which I recently really enjoy, and I think that people really got into it, and I saw it already after just those few months from when we started to import those tissue culture plants, is this Lobelia cardinalis mini. That's, I saw really quite a few people already having a really, really good results. And that's a so nice, easygoing, great looking, very universal plant. So I think like for today, from what you can just go into the shop and buy here, that would be probably my favorite.
Cool.
And for the fish, I generally probably like nanofish. I'm not really into a big species. I don't like having some fights in the tank and having to think which can go with what and what will eat what and so on and so on. I like angels. I have two quite a growing black ones in that tank behind me. So yeah, angels are nice. I never really had a proper big tank with discus, and that would be probably something I want to do in some future, because that's the fish which can go with some nice cape tanks and planted tanks as well. It's quite tricky, mainly because of this high temperature requirements, which is a bit against what you want to do with plants. Yeah, so mainly nanofish, different kinds, and from the big fish, probably angels and discus.
You just mentioned I'm going to totally butcher the name of the Cardinals Mini. What's the difference between the mini variety and the non-mini variety? Because the standard Cardinals has been here for a while. It's one that I've never successfully managed to grow. So what's the difference between the two variations?
Oh, that's obviously mini will be mini.
Yeah.
So we'll have much more compact growth and probably slower growth, thinking kind of vertically.
Yeah.
That's that's the difference. Let's say talking about the plants, those professional companies who grow plants dedicated for use in aquariums are making those small tricks to them to achieve some parameters which the aquascapers want, and most of them will be to limit the size, basically to make them kind of smaller, kind of scale them down. That's why you have though very often you have those additional mini name to it. So yeah, if you even I found some glossostigma in the river some time ago, and I had this planted here in one of the tanks, and that's definitely grows a bit different than the glossostigma from Tropica.
Okay.
The same species here, but that comes from the laboratory from a certain strain of of plant, and this just grows in a while in New Zealand river, so this will be slightly different. And
Cool.
Generally those plants are made to be a bit more compact, I would say.
Helen's brought up a question or a comment that's actually going to lead me into a question. It is also entirely possible to build a beautiful tank around a species of fish that you wish to keep, which is what she tends to do. When you're working on or deciding on a new aquarium, do you build it around the fish that you want to put in it first, or do you build it around like your hardscape, your plants, and your idea of the scape that you're wanting to work on?
Yeah. So for me, myself, I would definitely build a tank around the hardscape, plants, and everything else, and then think, oh, which fish would be looking nice to it. So me personally, I'm generally treating fish as like a additional decoration for the tank.
Yeah.
So I'm enjoying them for their particular size, color, shape, not really for their natural habitat or something like that. But what Helen does, I think it's great, and that's another side of it, which is all this biotope thinking and trying to recreate as natural or the best possible environment for that particular fish, and or you can have few species of fish which let's say live naturally together or close to each other, and then build the hardscape or the whole tank for them to look and feel great. And that's absolutely fantastic, and we will be definitely getting soon some products which will be dedicated for this kind of aquascaping, with dedicated different colored soils and sands and gravels and all this kind of stuff. So people will be able to not only have, let's say, white sand or gray sand. There will be also a brown sand and dark sand, and
Cool. What's your favorite style of aquascape? To maybe a view, but also for you to try and create. Do you have a preference?
Yeah, I definitely like, and it was always a challenge for me to with the Iwagumi. So something like, behind me. It's probably not the most popular style at the moment, but that just comes and goes. I think it's like with the fashion, it will it will come back in some years, or so that's something, yeah, which I like. I don't think I have any like a particular type which I like love the most or anything like that. I think everything can be either beautiful or not so much.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. What have you seen changes wise in the New Zealand aquascaping scene over the last couple of years?
Oh, yeah, I think it's just in infancy, let's say, and it was just born not so long time ago, I think. So it's a huge that's it's changing very, very much and very, very fast, which so I think we just need to keep focusing people on using good quality products. And I'm not saying that the aquascaping can be or have to be very expensive, nothing like that, and you have to buy some branded product because otherwise you are a loser. No, absolutely not. Everyone should choose what he can afford, but my experience with that hobby is that, and I'm sure you will agree with me also, with running your own shop, that unfortunately if you try to spare the money on things like equipment or filters or heaters, you're just paying twice. There's just no point. And especially if you want to go high tech, or high tech in a meaning that that you want to achieve some really particular goals, and you want to have a tank clear of algae and your water perfectly clean and crystal clear, and you are fuzzy about how it will all look. If you cut corners on the equipment, you will just bury yourself in unanswered question. And there's so many people asking, I have this ammonia peak, and what's wrong? And then people would, let's say, oh yeah, just use that whatever product we sell to lower the ammonia. This is just an example from my head. But then if you have a bad filtration in the tank, you can use whatever chemicals you want and do spend crazy amount of money trying to fixing it, where you will never achieve that, because you just don't have enough filter media area to actually that water to get biologically clean. The same, let's say, with lighting. As much as some of these professional lights can seem expensive, but unfortunately that it just has to cost that kind of money, because that there is a knowledge behind it, there is the technology, there are material used, and if you buy something which is 1/3 of the price or 1/4 of the price, and seems to have the same power, or it's marketed to be super duper, unfortunately it can't, because otherwise it would be more expensive, if it would.
That leads me into the next question I had. What's the importance of light when it comes to planted aquariums? I think for a long time, T8s, T5s, mural halides were the thing to go, and then LEDs have come along, and which has been the game changers. But so, how important are these lighting systems for planted setups?
So that's probably the one biggest change and shift in this industry, which happened in those last, let's say, 20 years. So I remember having this size tank, which is 900 by 450 by 450 in the old days, and having either 3 70 watts HQI lights or 2 150 HQI lights over it. So that's you can light a big chunk of the street with that kind of lights, and it was quite noisy and quite crazy, and then all these T5s came in, and obviously T8s were before that, and that was in use for several, for a decade or more than a decade, but and then it all changed to LEDs, and that's a big change, because it changes the way you don't really consider power of the light, or the watts, as you wish, as the most important factor. Doesn't really matter. You can have a 90 watt light, LED light, which will create much more light than another one which takes 150 from the grid, because if it is well made, it can use the power or electricity better. So that's one a very big change. In general, doesn't matter which light type you use. Like they were cheap metal halogen lights and very expensive metal halogen lights. They were cheap T8s and expensive T8s. They were cheap T5s and expensive T5s. And now you have cheap LEDs and expensive LEDs.
Yeah.
So that nothing has changed in here. So you can still have a cheap light, a good light, a reasonable light, and a crazy expensive light. But light with the plants is definitely very, very important and very limiting factor. So that's one of these main limiting factors for growing plants, and that's probably one thing I wouldn't spare the money on, for sure.
Yeah. So when I talk to people about growing plants, it's not obviously in the same sort of extent as an aquascape, but just general plant growth. My mindset's always been you kind of try and build a balance between lighting, CO2, and fertilizer. And if one of those parts of the triangle is not quite balanced, you're going to have issues one way, limiting plant growth, too much algae, and that sort of stuff. So,
so definitely that's 100% the main rule. If you are a fish keeper and you have, your tank and there are some plants growing there, and in one day you are waking up and you think like, whoa, from today I want to grow those plants, or I want to make them better. So then, the first small step you can take, it's to start to add a bit more fertilizer, but a bit. And then if you've done that and you want to take another step, I would recommend to jump into a CO2, and it doesn't, especially for the smaller tanks, it doesn't have to be that full on, pressurized CO cylinder. There are some solutions which are good for the start and doesn't cost so much money. And when you do that, the next step is to get a strong light. Alternatively, if you want to get your new light first, make sure that it's dimmable, because the worst thing you can do is to apply a very, very strong light to a tank which is not really ready for it, because you will be struggling.
Definitely agree. I think I read or listened to something a while ago saying that like the vast majority of all the LED lights that are on the market are a gazillion times too powerful for most people's aquariums. Like they're significantly over-engineered, but it's the tweaking them as the end user to try and get where you need them to be at the right power spectrum to not cause yourself issues.
Yes, the power it's the kind of the last thing you should be considered with. Like that's not something you want to, which is not showing you which light is better and which is worse. That it doesn't work like this anymore. It was maybe in the past with those previous types of lighting, not with LEDs. You can put hundreds of watts of LEDs, and if they have a wrong spectrum or just an average spectrum, you will just get problems and very difficult to control. So that's why the specific aquarium dedicated lights are so expensive, because that you need to think it this way, that if the factory produce general lighting, it's a massive it's a mass production, and you can make 100,000 millions of some light fittings, and then they can be sold, or those, let's say, those LED elements, and then they can be sold in many different fittings and used for many different things. But then suddenly you have that aquarium use, which requires some specific peaks of these light frequencies to actually help grow your plants, and also the fish looks good, which is a separate subject. And it will never be produced and sold in so big quantities. So this specific type of lighting needs to be made in a very, very limited quantities. And that's why it's more expensive. If most of the like standard tank sets or aquarium sets which have some light in it. It will be just a generic light. So it's still a light. The plants will still grow and the fish will still have their daytime. But I have here in our shop we have the same fish, which is black neon, in 3 different tanks, and each of these tanks has a different type of light, and if you would, so people are coming here and either seeing that themselves, or I'm sometimes pointing it, that unfortunately or fortunately, if you go up with price with that type of lighting, you are starting to see more and more colors in these fishes.
Right.
So it's not only about the plants. We have some the marine version or a reef version of this hanging light, which is behind me, and we did some tests here in Christchurch on people's tanks just to show them how it works and what it's capable of. And it's incredible, like changing the light over and seeing the difference in the coloration of all these corals and fish, and people, the owners are seeing it and being often quite surprised. Oh, I never saw that fish had this colorful piece here and there, or some dots or spots or lines and things.
Yeah. Lighting is a huge and wonderful topic, and it is something that I am very, very limited to in my knowledge.
So another very important thing about and that's actually important stuff, and for people to realize that with both of these previous systems, so the fluorescent tubes and metal halogen lights, you were like the fitting was one piece of equipment, and then the actually light element or a bulb or tube was a separate one. So you could buy a fitting and have it for 10 years and just replace the element, where now you are buying the whole thing and you can't replace anything. And believe me that they are, all of these LEDs have some lifespan, and unfortunately the cheap ones have a short lifespan.
Yeah, correct.
And you can't expect for them to be good very long, and then after a year or 2 years or half a year or whatever time it takes, you can expect some decrease in this light power or light quality, and you can't do anything about it. That's just the end of the lifespan of that, the whole lamp basically.
Once it's done, it's done. Where do you see the aquascaping scene going in the next 2 years?
Hopefully in a good direction.
Yeah, fair call. I guess, like, are you seeing any trends that are beginning to develop that are getting a bit more momentum or anything like that?
So do you think, are you asking about New Zealand or in general?
We can say go specifically, keep it into New Zealand.
Yeah, I have a feeling there will be more and more people going into it. There is definitely an interest, and you will probably see it as well in Nelson, and it's a difficult one, Yeah, I think New Zealand is on in the beginning of that journey, and I see it very positive. I think it's a great time for it to kick off, and people just have to take their time and try doing things in a bit different way. Maybe start to think about taking more attention to how the aquariums and the tank looks in total as a picture. People will probably start to take photos of their tanks, which is that another kind of side of that hobby. I know there were some ideas about creating or organizing some New Zealand contests or something like that, which I think it's a great idea, and a bit of the competition and competing always makes the things people more into it. So yeah, it's I think it's a very exciting time, and it looks like a lot of things to happen.
I think seems to be more and more people willing to try and giving it a go, and with like more shops like yours popping up that are sort of specializing on it, more availability means more access, and more access means more people giving it a go, which I think it's a positive thing.
Yeah, definitely. And it's I think it's not only in this freshwater aquascaping. I think in general this whole hobby is on a rise, and not only in New Zealand. I think globally, because that's what I said earlier, that I'm surprised how much content about this subject is in the media, and that obviously creates people interest and make people wanting to try it. Locally here in Christchurch, I think a lot of people kind of shut their tanks down after the earthquakes. Obviously, earthquakes and aquariums are not really going well together. And now I think that's enough time passed for people to kind of starting to forget about that, and trying to move forward and maybe come back to their own passions or hobbies and things they did before. So I think here very locally there is a kind of a big comeback to it as well.
We've had a specific question about the LEDs, so we'll just touch on that before we move too much further forward. What are specific colours of the LEDs, and what's more important, red, whites, blues, and greens for plant growth?
Yeah, so that's probably this $1 million question, which I would leave to the people who are creating those lights. Just trust them and use their knowledge, because I don't know.
There's actually a really good conversation going on in the chat about color spectrums. Andre's getting some information out there, so I think there's a few people reading that, so that's fantastic. So
I think that's probably what I would suggest. No matter what your budget is, try to find a dedicated aquarium lighting in your budget and go with it.
Yeah, cool.
I wouldn't suggest to experiment with putting some random LED strips under your aquarium cover or anything like that, yeah, it can end up with some problems.
Yep.
Not only, you know, aquarium wise, but also safety wise. So yeah, I would stick with the dedicated products. Choose something which is in your budget, and with the colors like this RGB stuff. Different suppliers would have different approach to it in terms of how much adjustment you have there. I'm personally not a fan of those single color kind of shifters where you can go totally red or totally green, and that this doesn't work for me. Like I have no idea, you know, how to adjust these colors to actually get a good spectrum for plants or fish or any kind of life. Potentially, I might get something I like for my eye, which is not easy by itself. But if the thing that if it looks right for my eye, it doesn't need to be right for what I want to achieve. And if you look to those really top end, high end, most professional lighting systems, they will have no adjustment at all. It's only on and off, maybe dimming. The Skylight, the supplier which we are working with at the moment, mostly, they developed this really new type of adjustment where they created a kind of a matrix of settings, of setups which you can choose from, and so that you will have a range of different colors you can choose from, or color temperatures you can choose from. But each of this setting, which is pre-programmed, make a sense for the light itself, in terms of power it consumes and, you know, amount of light it gives away, and it also makes sense for the spectrum of light, for the plants, for the fish, for you know, for all the aquarium system. So instead of, you know, you trying to guess something which you have no idea what you do, and without a specialized professional power meter and, you know, very specialized equipment to actually check physically what kind of light you are producing, you are just totally guessing, and
Yeah.
you know, the only way you can examine it is your eyes, which are not necessary, you know, a good judgment for a proper light for growing plants, or, you know.
Definitely. Yeah. Cool. So if I was to give you an empty 2-foot aquarium, like right now, right this instant, what would you put in it? What would you set up, and how would you make that work?
So I have, I'm not sure what I would put to a 2-foot tank at the moment, but I have two kind of projects in my mind at the moment. One is this one here, which is a paludarium style. Yep. And I want to build those. You can see that there is some weird kind of a scaffolding sitting there, and so I want to build like a like a rock wall, which will be going all the way up to the edge of the tank, and I want to have like a bit like a Fjordland style, kind of like a rock wall with some waterfall water going down over it, and obviously on the bottom of it there will be some water for maybe like a dark or black water style thing going on. And then we have another small cube, which is probably 300 by 300 by 300 or something like that. And we are thinking to try to make some like a deep valley kind of scape there, or potentially something like just one quite large rock in the kind of center, and then some stem plants kind of coming from behind it.
Cool.
So these are two
Good.
projects which are somewhere, in early stages.
Yeah, awesome. So for those that don't know, you have your own store which is based around aquascaping. What inspired you to set up shop basically in the aquascaping scene?
Yeah, so it's like I said, it was always somewhere around me in the old days before I came to New Zealand, and then I stopped it because of just lack of time and lack of kind of space, or just being in one place basically.
Yeah.
And then those, let's say 1.5 years ago, I just thought maybe it's time to come back. And then having all the relationships, all the import business which we do here, we just thought that it might be a good idea to combine it together and use the possibilities we have to bring some products in with the hobby. So it's kind of 2-in-1, let's say now.
Yeah. Cool. This was a question that was asked last week when we mentioned that you were coming on. There's a lot of different aquasoils on the market in New Zealand now, more than there ever has been before. And again, I think that's because the aquascaping scene is picking up. Obviously, they're not all the same. They're not all made the same way, and they're all a bit different. Can you explain what an aquasoil is and the differences between specific brands, if you know differences between them?
Yeah. So if we are talking about this, typical aqua soil, or what we call an active aqua soil, that originates from Japan, and I believe they were using it originally for bonsai trees and basically growing, not really growing plants underwater. And then it was adopted for aquascaping and for underwater. So it's basically different kind of soils or ashes or volcanic rock, which is bonded and together to create those roughly rounded granules. So you kind of have a soil material without having mud in your tank, because it stays in those small pebbles, let's say, and because it is a very porous substance, it can hold a lot of nutrients and whatever soil normally holds. And there will be many differences depending on the manufacturer or supplier or brand. It can the difference be the color, the size, what it is actually made from, because there will be different materials used. Different suppliers have different approaches also to how much nutrients you get in it, and then depending on it, you can either to dilute this, especially in the early stage of the tank, and do a lot of water changes, or if it is not so rich, it's a bit easier on the start, but then you have to add some root taps in different forms quite early if you want to keep that being very fertile substrate. So there's really a lot of differences between the brands, and I think the best way is to either seek for advice for the people who are selling it. They should know what they sell, or just use all this knowledge and media we have, and just look for what basically read all the manuals or the instructions from the suppliers, from the manufacturers, and see what they say about the product, see what how they suggest to start the tank, to set up a tank, to what's their suggested fertilizing routine. If they are saying start add fertilizers immediately, or they are saying start to add fertilizers after a month or after 2 months, and this will show you what's actually already added into the soil.
Is that because it's so porous it then absorbs the fertilizers and then feeds the plants on the way up?
So
is that how they work?
Yeah, so there are two general ways of fertilizing the aquarium. One is what we call rich, and one is lean, and that reflects to adding the fertilizer to a water column. So you can either add, let's say, a lot of everything to the water, and so the plants have whatever they need, but then you have to be sure to actually add everything, because if there is one thing missing and a lot of everything else, then that's not good.
Balances out.
Or the other way is to use this lean fertilizing, which means that you actually add only as much as it's needed, and try to keep the levels in the water as low as possible. But then you need to make sure that your substrate is very rich, because that's where the plants will get most of their nutrients from. And so that's this whole idea about those active soils. We can talk really long about it. It's that so many different tricks to it. For example, if there are also different approaches for, let's say, testing water. Some people are saying, well, I don't test water at all. I just test something when something goes wrong, or I start something going wrong, and then I check what it is. And other people would check or test their water regularly and try to to understand what's happening, and have a good eye on all these parameters. And one tricky thing about active soils and them absorbing different elements is with phosphates. If you are new to this and you start at fertilizers and testing water, you might see that that no matter how much phosphate you add to the tank, or even if you are using all-in-one fertilizer, you would see that your nitrates or nitrogen is going up, but your phosphates are just zero all the time. And that's why, because most of these active soils are absorbing a lot of phosphates in them. And so that's something, often mistake that you add too much, and in some point this substrate cannot take any more, and then you have a bloom of some crazy algae going on, and you don't understand what's happening because all the parameters are right, but that might be just this 1 day and 1 hour when the substrate is full of this phosphate, and it just can't take any more.
Yeah.
So some people would, let's say, test, and that's an easy check for that. You can do your phosphate test using some syringe with a bit of like a needle or something like that, just to try to take the water from underneath the substrate or from the substrate. Yeah. And you will instantly see that you can have nothing in the water, but over there you can have 5 or 2 or 3 or whatever. Yeah. So yeah, that's.
I never thought of testing from the substrate.
Yeah. Try to do the phosphate test from, but active substrate. I'm not saying gravel.
Yes. Yeah. Cool. So for those that are watching that don't know, tissue culture plants are very, very new to New Zealand, 3-4 months or something along those lines. And I believe that Remi is the one responsible for these coming in. So as a general hobbyist, thank you very much for doing that. I think it's fantastic that we have these options now here on the market. But I'd like to know what inspired you to start bringing in the Tropica tissue cultures.
That's I was actually living in Denmark for some time, and I was in Tropica factory then once, and the Tropica was always somewhere around that hobby, and that was definitely a first company who kind of say dedicated itself to growing plants for aquarists. So that's a brand by itself. It in Europe for a long time, that was probably the synonym of aquarium plants. Something like Jeep for plasterboard in New Zealand, if you know what I mean.
100% the world leader in this.
Yeah, and so when we decided, to start importing this, all the products for that hobby, it was quite like an instant idea that that plants are the thing which is probably one of the most, if not the most important piece of this puzzle. And in New Zealand we with all the biosecurity requirements, that's realistically the only way to get plants through the border. We can't really get any grown plants, let's say. So it took a good half a year and hundreds of emails with the authorities, because no one really realized there what we are talking about, because there are some in vitro plants being imported to New Zealand, but it's mainly for then growing them here to a full mature form. I think orchids are brought here as in vitro, for example, and probably many other species as well, all kinds of plants, but nothing really to be sold in those funny cups. They didn't really know the idea of it. I can even remember on the first shipment when we had an inspection on the airport. So people were totally saying, "Well, I never saw something like that. What are you going to do with it?"
Cool. Yeah.
So yeah, it was challenging and trying to to get those first species approved and putting all the existing paperwork into some order for all is to be legal and yeah.
Yeah. So if you don't want to answer this because it's a bit of a trade secret, feel free not to. What's the process been for you to get the green light and getting these plants into the country? Obviously, you've said it's taken 6 months, so it's been a process.
Yes. So I would say the first step was making the order and some sense of some existing rules which were already in place, and trying to kind of apply them for this specific kind of product, I would say. I probably won't go into the details, but
that's cool.
But I can say that for the future we have some plans and ideas of going forward, and hopefully in time, depending on how the market will go and how it will all grow, we will try to get more and more species available, and we will probably soon have some new exciting brand of the plants available as well.
Cool. If you can't see, I'm very much smiling with excitement. As both a hobbyist and a retailer, it's exciting, very, very exciting.
Yes, and that's also something I probably wanted to say, that we really want to work with people like yourselves and to create some kind of a network of shops across the country, just to make this popular. We don't really want to be some crazy exclusive place, on Tuam Street in Christchurch, which only sell, some goods for a crazy price. We just want the people to be able to go to the professional shop in their city or the town or the neighborhood, and be able to get a good advice and a good product with good quality product with a proper New Zealand warranty, being imported here fully legally with all the certificates or whatever it's important for the product to be here, and all the spare parts available and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Just back onto the tissue culture plants. Obviously, we've got some pretty long-term established aquatic importers. Why do you think or do you have any idea why nobody has imported tissue culture plants up until this moment? Like, why has it taken essentially a hobbyist or a new player in the industry to make such groundbreaking
Probably
steps?
no one wanted to, exchange those hundreds of emails with MPI and few other agencies, and why you want to do them?
Yeah. I mean that's probably quite a fair answer. Again, I thank you before for doing it.
That's you also yeah, thanks, yeah, thank you. You also need to understand that as much as this is a hobby, it's the same like for yourself. This is also a business, so it needs to add up financially as well.
Correct. Yeah.
But because we are a small market, but it's only as many of us here in New Zealand as it is, and there will be not much more tomorrow, or it's sometimes difficult for these numbers to add up, and for the large companies which are importing some pet supplies, it wouldn't make much difference for them in their incomes, or
Sure.
sheets for selling some dozen of plants a week or a day or a month or whatever. Probably I don't know. Be good for me, because then I was first.
Yeah. And again, we appreciate that. Thank you very much. So what do you and Aqua House have in store moving forward for us, the hobbyists, the consumers? Have you got big plans you're wanting to roll out, or have you got more products that you're looking at, more plant lines, all that kind of stuff? What does the future look for you and your business, and for what you're providing for us as hobbyists?
So I think at this stage we have quite a lot of stuff already here, and I think it's already quite a lot for the start. Going forward in some near future, it looks like we will have another big brand coming in. Which
does it happen to be Weo by any chance, as Andreas mentioned?
Yes, that's another one.
Yeah, that's what I'm excited for.
Yeah. So that's coming. Veo is coming now, basically.
Cool.
On the way. But talking with Veo, as much as it is exciting product, it is quite a premium product. So people need to be prepared that the sand or a gravel from them, it's not going to be in a Bunnings price.
Can you explain the gravel a little bit? To my understanding, it's in the bag is like a replica or representation of a specific region, if you're trying to mimic it for biotypes sort of scenario. Yep.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's the whole idea of this brand, and Yao, who is a CEO, and he is basically creating and designing those products. The whole idea is to bring that aquascaping idea to this biotope on natural habitat type of aquariums, and that's why there is this variety of different substrates to just to help with that, and that's really nothing else like that around. So yeah, that's one of the kind product comes with the price. It's all made, packed and designed in Spain. So yeah, it's not like someone had an idea, somewhere and then get some cheap labor on another side of the world to get it done. It's all made there, and
Fantastic.
Yeah, so it comes with the price, but yeah, one of the kind product for sure.
Are you looking at having fish stocks within your business, or are you just keeping it to sort of hardscapes equipment?
Yeah, we are asked about that quite often here in the shop. But yeah, that's not in our short-term plans, just because we just have, maybe one day there will be, if someone comes to our door and say, hey, I'm a fish keeper and I have an experience in maintaining tanks in a shop, and I want to work for you. I have no problem in setting up some tanks with fish, but at the moment we just don't have the resources to do all that stuff every day, and it's another big job.
I can assure you it is a very big job maintaining multiple shop tanks every day.
Yeah,
I can totally understand where you're going with not having the resources to do so.
Yeah, and realistically, I know that you are doing this in the right way, that you do all your quarantines and all kind of stuff, and you actually sell the fish which are already kind of sound and strong and healthy. I think not everyone are doing it this way, and it can either be done right, or it's better not to do it at all.
Yeah, fair call. Absolutely fair call. So that comes to the end of my structured questions that I had for you. So thank you very much. We like to end all of our coffee dates with what we call a school of six, which is 6 very short answered, quick and easy questions. So we'll rock through with that. So if you're doing a coin toss, do you call heads or tails?
Sorry, I'm not sure what you mean.
If you're doing a coin toss, do you call heads or tails?
Oh, okay. I would say tails, I think.
Tails never fails. Are you a tea or a coffee drinker?
Both.
Well, okay. If you could have a meal with anybody, past or present, alive or not, who would that be?
Maybe Ferdinand Porsche.
Okay. I don't know who that is, but okay. Paper, scissors, rocks. What's your first call?
Sorry?
Paper, scissors, rocks.
Oh, paper, scissors, rocks. All right.
Yeah. What's your first call?
Well, probably rocks.
Okay. Are we alone in the universe?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Normally I ask what's your unicorn fish. I'll open that up to what's your either unicorn fish or your unicorn plant that you would like to either keep, grow, reproduce, photograph, or what have you.
Yeah, that would be this Utricularia graminifolia.
I suspected it could have been that. Cool. And where can people find you if they want to learn a bit more about you or a bit more about your business or support you in what you're doing and shop with you?
Yeah, so I would say, if you want to see us personally, everyone is more than welcome to visit us in Christchurch. It's either me or Isabella, one of us. It's always here. Mm-hmm. So everyone are more than welcome to come and have a chat to us, and yeah. And with the products, if if you like to buy and shop locally, just go into your trusted shop and ask for some of our products, and they might be already there, or they might be soon there, or they might be there if you ask for them. If you would like to shop online, you can you can shop in our online shop, having a full spectrum of available products. Or some people might choose to shop with you, for example, and then that's great as well.
What's your physical shop address and your website?
It's 419 Chuam Street, and the shop, it's called aquahouse.co.nz.
Awesome. Again, thank you very much for joining us. It's been really appreciated, and thank you very much for what you're doing for not just the aquascaping hobby here in New Zealand, but in general the hobby in New Zealand, bringing these new products, these new lines, tissue culture, and all that kind of stuff. It's phenomenal. It's fantastic, and I really appreciate it. I know there's plenty of other people that have appreciated what you're doing. So thank you very much.
Thanks. That's very, very kind words, and it's great to hear it, and it will definitely make us, working hard to get more stuff in, and I just hope that all this will make people go into it and just enjoy that. How some people say, a beautiful hobby of aquascaping. Quite a famous saying, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much, and thank you everybody for joining us. We'll catch you later, guys.
Thank you.
Happy fish keeping.